Tomorrow's Careers, presented by the Johns Hopkins University and the ABC Television Network from the studios of WAAM in Baltimore. Each week, the Johns Hopkins University brings you the highlights of a different career. Tonight, we will bring you the story of the men who are graduating from American universities this year, their hopes for the future, and the opportunities available to them as they leave school to begin their life work. This week, we bring you the story of Jobs 1956. Our guests tonight are students who receive degrees next month from the Johns Hopkins University, as well as Mr. Clayton Hill of the Employee Relations Department of the DuPont Company, and Mr. J. Lyon Rogers of the Placement Bureau at the Johns Hopkins University. And now here to bring you this story is your host, Lynn Poole.
Good evening. Tonight we're going to deviate a bit from the regular pattern of our career shows to find out something about the college students who will be graduating this year and entering this workaday world. Now, in 2 or 3 weeks, the strains of pomp and circumstance will flow across the college campuses all over the country. Commencement speeches will be made extolling the virtues of youth and ambition and placing firmly in the hearts of these graduates the moral obligations of bettering the world they are about to set out to conquer. And conquer that world they will. But shutting out the music of the processional and looking beyond the pageantry, let's get a closer look and have a look beneath the cloaks of academic distinction and see the young men who are about to take this step, one of the most important steps in their entire lives. What happens to these men? How do they go about getting a job? How do they decide what job they want to do? Which job among the many offered to them will they take? And just what do they expect from life after graduation? Now, in the past several years, there's been a tremendous increase in the demand for college-trained men in both business and industry. The largest increase has been in the demand for men trained in engineering, chemistry, and physics. Last year, the employment of college graduates in these fields increased nearly 19% over the year before. And this year, a survey of 160 companies indicates that the demand for engineering, chemistry, and physics graduates will increase more than 47% over the past year. Now, in all other fields of employment of college-trained people, well, the increase is going to be more than 15%. Last year, the employment of graduates in fields other than engineering, chemistry, and physics was up just 2% over the year before. Now, this is a significant increase in the need for non-technical men that must be trained in non-technical fields. So you can see that the picture has changed, so that instead of the college graduate going out on the street to look for a job after graduation, now, especially in engineering and science, jobs come looking for the men. And that's a mighty lucky thing for these young men. And more than 400 colleges and universities have placement bureaus. And these placement bureaus help the graduate as he searches for the right work, the work for him to do. So tonight, we'd like to meet one of these placement officers. And we're happy to present the placement officer at Johns Hopkins University, Mr. J. Lyon Rogers, Jr.
As Mr. Poole has said, most schools have provided placement officers as agents to bring the employer and prospective employee together. This is done in many ways, one being the college campus recruiting program. This year, 229 men will receive their AB degree, 21 PhD candidates, and 13 master candidates. There will be 78 of the bachelors who did not take on-campus interviews. Many of these, of course, are going into graduate work. That left 161 men to be interviewed by the recruiters, plus the 33 candidates for advanced degrees. And there were 222 companies scheduled to interview on the campus between January and March. There were perhaps 100 other companies that wanted to come to the campus, but because of conflicting schedules were not able to. Besides these campus interviews, last year we heard from roughly 300 other companies which had good opportunities for college graduates, and we expect the number to be even greater this year.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. You've given us a clear picture of the real demand for well-trained college graduates. But let's find out what really goes on when these young men come in contact with a recruiter in an interview. Let's listen in while Mr. Clayton Hill of the DuPont Company conducts an interview with Jack Sutherland, who is a senior at the Johns Hopkins University.
Jack, we've already talked a little bit about your summer experiences and the things that you enjoyed during that practical experience. Can you tell me a little bit more about the subjects that you enjoyed, particularly here at school?
Well, basically my interests are in some field of design, although at the present time not perhaps specific.
I understand then that you're wanting to know a little bit more about the particular kind of work that we might have. It's something that we can talk about a little bit more. Well, I think that this goes along very well with what you told me earlier about your liking the descriptive geometry and your liking of the machine design. Now, the chemical industry, which I'm representing, is a process industry, so that perhaps you'll be working in some of the processing of some of these materials, plastics or synthetic fibers, for example. Now, I wonder, does this seem like something that you might be interested in?
Yes, sir. I'd certainly like to investigate any possibilities in that field.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, let me spend just a minute telling you about some of the work that we might have. Some of the examples that I might use would be the cellophane. Once you have a chemical material that's cast in this film form, all of the mechanical operations, the driving, the gears, are all designed by mechanical engineers, so that you can see that there would be plenty of similar work that you have had some contact with.
Sir, at DuPont, would I be working mainly with mechanical or perhaps chemical engineers?
Well, now, that's a question we get asked quite a bit. But we're going to consider the mechanical engineers as doing work that they are acquainted with, work that they've experienced in their schooling. Certainly, we're going to leave the chemical processing to the chemical engineer. After all, that's what they're more acquainted with. But the mechanical engineers, and that's what you've been trained in here, would be carrying on some of the details in the cams, the speed reducers, and in the pumps and compressors. Some of the things that you've learned in thermodynamics. Let me tell you a little bit more about the procedure that we would follow if we are going to continue our negotiations. We would like to send your application to our engineering department. Now, that would probably be in Wilmington. Would that be a location that you'd be interested in considering?
Well, all things being equal, I perhaps would have some preference for the Connecticut area, because that's where I live.
Well, that's right. We did talk about Connecticut. Wilmington, of course, is right here on the eastern coast, and I think that you would find that that would fit in pretty well with your background here on the East Coast. Our engineering department is in Wilmington and is responsible for the design and construction of our plants and laboratories throughout the United States.
Well, basically, I feel I am interested in the job potentialities.
Well, now, that's something you want to learn something about now. It's important for what you do in June, and of course, it's important.
And now most of the interviewing is over. These graduating seniors have had several interviews. Many have traveled to several companies to see what the plant looks like, to meet the people they'll be working with, and most have made their decisions.
Yes, most of these young men have made their decisions. It's probably the most important decision that they'll ever make in their lives. Well, you've seen some of these young men. Let's have a chance to talk with them. And I have here a list of some of these seniors at Johns Hopkins. Let's find out what they're doing. Let's begin by calling in three young men here. Bob Nickel, Ed Hahn, and Dick McShane. Come in, gentlemen.
Hi, Mr. Poole. Mr. Poole.
Hi. Sit down. I want to chat with you for just a minute here. Bob, let me start with you. We hear that there are so many opportunities Now, if there are opportunities, then you must have talked with a lot of companies. How many interviews did you have of the kind we saw here a moment ago with Clayton Hill?
Probably a little more than average here, sir. About 40 on campus.
You talked with 40 companies?
40.
How many did you talk with?
About 18, sir.
How about you?
I only had about 10.
You only had about 10 interviews. Well, you talked with these 40 companies. Now, as I understand it, you then go and visit the companies in which you are really interested. Is that right?
Most of them request that you do, sir. Yes.
How many did you visit?
About 15 at their home offices.
Must be pretty confusing how to make up your mind on this. Well, what company did you select?
IBM, sir. The Research and Engineering in Poughkeepsie, New York.
With the IBM company.
IBM Corporation.
You're married, aren't you?
No, sir, not yet. Very soon, this July.
Good. Well, there's another thing that faces all of you, or most of you. How about military service? What's your status there?
I'll be a reserve officer this June, sir.
You will. You'll first go to work, then you'll go into the Army.
Into the Army.
How about you, gentlemen?
Well, sir, I'm working with IBM too, sir, in Poughkeepsie. Same place where Bob's working.
What did you do? Gang up on this together? What sort of work are you going to do?
I'll be in electronics, sir, and computer design.
You were an electrical engineering
Yes, sir,
student
that's right.
here.
That's right, sir.
You noticed I said you were. I'm counting on that June 12th graduation. When you start working with computers, what sort of things are you going to do?
Well, I'll be designing circuits mainly, I imagine, sir. I'm not too familiar exactly with the exact details of the work, but I'm sure there's quite a future in computers. That's why I want to get into it.
Do you think that in electronics as a whole, there's a real future?
Certainly, sir. There's no doubt about it.
Well, we certainly depend on that camera right out there tonight, the electronics to carry us here. Dick McShane, how about you?
Well, I'm a civil engineer, and I'm going to work for a civil engineering firm, Day & Zimmerman, up in Philadelphia. They're a consulting firm.
You're married?
Yes, I am.
Do you have military service coming up?
Yes, sir. I served in the Air Force.
You've already had it?
Yes, sir.
So you can just...
I'm all through.
Go right on your way. And, well, let me ask you this. You want to be a consulting engineer. Why did you choose this?
Because in the civil engineering field, I feel it's the most diversified.
In other words, you won't be doing the same things
That's
day
right.
after day. Well, how do you feel about that? You're going to be working with computers. That's the same thing every day. Do you think it's going to be dull?
I don't think so. There'll be a lot of challenging problems, sir.
You too?
No challenge, no problem there,
No
sir.
problem there. Real challenge, too. Well, gentlemen, lots of luck to you. And don't forget that when you get out there, you're going to be Hopkins alumni.
Right. Thank you, Mr.
All
Frank.
right. There are two other gentlemen I'd like to have you meet here right now. They're Al Lavin and Jim Schroeder. These two young men, hi, how are you? Are you both mechanical engineers?
No, sir. I'm a civil engineer.
You're a civil, and you're a mechanical engineer. Well, what are you going to do when you get out?
Well, I'm going to be a structural engineer with the Glen Elm Martin Company.
Well, now, just what does a structural engineer do?
Well, in the aircraft industry, there's lots of problems in structural dynamics. I'm very interested in that field.
Does this include rockets of any sort?
Well, yes, sir, it could.
Good. Jim, as a mechanical engineer, where are you going to go?
Well, I think I'm one of the few fellows that's going to go to work for a small company. I'm going to work for Aircraft Armaments out in Cockeysville, a suburb of Baltimore. I feel that a small company has more in the way of vast opportunities and possibly a chance to grow with the company. I think this is important. And that's why I chose the small company.
That's why you chose the small company. I think we better talk too much about that. Mr. Hill over there with a large corporation isn't going to like that very much. I see a pained look on his face. But nevertheless, I'm sure you're right that there will be tremendous opportunity for you there. And Al, when you go and start working on those rockets and you get one that's headed for the moon, will you let me know?
I sure will.
Good. Luck to you, gentlemen.
Cool.
Right now, let's have a chance to meet a couple of men by the name of Jim. Jim Hockenberry and Jim Halloran.
How are you, sir?
Hi, gentlemen. Jim Hockenberry, you're a chemical engineer.
Yes, sir, I am.
Are you too?
Yes,
That's
sir.
right. The two of you team up on this. But don't tell me you're going to work for the same company.
No, sir, not at all. I'm going to work for Carbide and Carbon Chemicals Company in Charleston, West Virginia.
Just what sort of a job will you do there?
Well, I'll be interested mainly in chemical production work right in the plant itself.
And how about you, Jim Howard?
Esso Standard Oil. I'm going into industrial sales.
Well, that's right. You were a chemical engineer, but you're going into the sales.
That's right, sir.
Well, how did the chemical engineering fit you for salesmanship?
Well, it fits me in the application of their products to a particular industry's needs. This might be in the chemical field where they have a terrific problem in a lubrication, let's say, or maybe a corrosion problem, what have you. My job would be to apply the Esso products to the remedy of this.
And in other words, when you work with customers, you have the chemical knowledge back of that to advise them what to do. Well, Jim Hockenberry, you're married, aren't you?
Yes, sir, I am.
How about your draft status or your military?
Well, I just have to wait and hope, I guess. I'm not in ROTC.
Well, when you both of you get out in the industry, what do you think your chances for success are in going on up the ladder? How do you look at the future?
Well, I'm mainly interested in liking my job, not necessarily in a large salary. I think if I like my work, I'm going to be very happy.
It brings up a very interesting point that I'd really like to ask you a very frank question. The men that you know here at Hopkins and at other schools, how do they feel about this? Are they interested in the job and the future of that job, or are they interested in getting in there and getting the salary?
Well, no, I don't believe they're interested in the salary mainly at all. I think most everyone is primarily interested in getting the type of work they like, and regardless of the salary.
And banking on the future.
Yes, sir.
Good. Well, gentlemen, lots of luck to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Poole.
There are a couple of more men that we're going to have a chance to talk with here. John Leonard and Bob Burgess.
Hi, Mr. Poole.
Hi, gentlemen. We've got two different approaches here to this business of a career. Bob, incidentally, Bob is one of our good lacrosse players at Johns Hopkins University. That's a sport that we're mighty proud of here, and they've done a grand job of it during this past year. But let's leave lacrosse for a moment and ask you where you're going to go to work.
Well, I plan to go with Armco Steel here in Baltimore.
And do you have military service facing you?
Yes, I do. I'm an ROTC, and when I graduate this June, I'll get a commission. And I expect I'll be called about January the 7th to active duty.
That's about 6 months after you graduate.
Right.
This interests me very much because a number of the men that we've been chatting here with this evening seem to be going into demand for your services. It certainly proves that all the articles that we read and the statistics that we see are true, that the engineers are the ones really in demand.
Right.
I would say so, yes.
I'm still going to hold out for a lot of humanities students myself because we need them. We need them badly. One more question. We talked with Bob Nickel here just a minute ago and Dick McShane about the number of interviews they had, number of jobs that were offered. And do you mind if I ask you how many interviews you had with companies?
I think I had about 20 or 25, roughly.
How many companies did you visit?
I took about 8 trips.
8 trips. How about you, John?
I had 16 interviews, and I think I had about 7 or 8 trips.
I should think this would make it very difficult for you to decide, but nevertheless, the future is really yours when you've got that much to choose from, isn't it?
That's right.
Thanks a lot. It was nice to talk to you. And we'd like to have a chance now to talk with some other men. You have been meeting, and I have been talking with young men who are going to get their bachelor's degrees. Let's meet 2 men, William Schwartz and Harry Keller.
Hi, Mr. Paul.
These 2 gentlemen are both going to receive Doctor of Engineering degrees, is that right?
Right.
At commencement on June 12th.
Well, not quite.
Not quite, but almost. You're going to have that Doctor of Engineering after your name very shortly. Do you mind if I ask you how many years this has taken you since you started out as freshmen?
Well, sir, I did my my undergraduate work in electrical engineering, and that was 4 years. And then I changed to chemical engineering, and since that change, it has taken me 6 years.
How about you, Bill?
Well, my total career has been spent in chemical engineering, and 4 years undergraduate and 5 years in the graduate school.
And during this time, you had a chance to work on research projects, too, didn't you? At the university. This is what I think is probably a very important part of the training.
That's right.
Harry, what company are you going with, and what are you going to do?
Well, I'm going with the Bell Telephone Laboratories, and my work will be research or development.
In the general field with the Bell Lab?
It'll be component design with communications equipment.
I think we'll stop there because you'll probably get very much out of my field if you give me any more details on that. Bill, I understand you're going to teach.
Well, I've been hoping and considering this very, very much in the teaching field.
Why do you want to teach?
Well, a few years ago, I became involved in teaching one of the undergraduate laboratories, and I liked it very much. And I think it's a very satisfying type of life, although the pay is not quite as much as the industrial type career.
Do you think you'll get a real satisfaction out of training other young men?
Oh, yes, very much so. It's when you see someone carrying out some of the concepts which you try to instill into them, this is a satisfying type career, I think.
Yes. Well, I hope you'll go through it because although we need to train these young men to go out into business and industry, we certainly need teachers or we're not going to keep filling those jobs around the countries if they siphon off all the teachers from the colleges and universities. Let me ask you another question. This also is, I think, a very frank question. I hope you'll give me a frank answer. Do you feel that right now you're sort of riding the crest of the wave? That you, in popular parlance, have it pretty good? Do you think about this?
Well, yes. As it's been mentioned before, people have taken up to 40 interviews. And this means that the opportunities are very limitless. But I think it is still up to the individual as to what he does with his career and with his life.
You mean you've been given the opportunity, and from then on, the door's been opened.
Yes, that's
and from then on, it's going to be up to him.
You receive a good key and a ticket, and whether or not you carry out your work and your career, and then that is up to the individual.
I think it's wonderful to realize that so many of these young men have this, and I ask that question specifically because talking with some of these young men here and others on the campus, I've been impressed with this feeling that the job is there and they can do it, but it's up to them. Gentlemen, I know you'll do that job, and I certainly hope you go on with that teaching. There's one other young man that I'd like to have you have a chance to meet before we go, and that's Ollie Arman. Hi, Ollie. Ollie represents another large group of students that we have at Johns Hopkins and in many schools around the country. Men from foreign countries. Where do you come from?
Istanbul, Turkey.
Istanbul, Turkey. You have done your work in aeronautics?
Well, I'm working for a master's degree in aeronautics. I finished mechanical engineering.
Now, you have a problem. I understand that you're going to be married.
That's right.
And then what?
Well, I hope to get citizenship eventually and be able to go in the aircraft industry because, as I understand now, because of all this defense work, they cannot hire non-citizens at the present. So I have to get citizenship first before I can work in the field.
I see. Well, now, as a person from a foreign country, how much service do you have to put in?
Well, military service over here,
service.
well, I guess after I get my permanent residence, it'll be 2 years, or if I join, it'll be 3 years, I imagine.
Then, of course, you also have a problem in that you can't go into an aircraft industry without a government clearance, and you can't get that unless you're a citizen.
Well, permanent residence, what they call it. They clear you, and then you wait for 5 years to get your citizenship. But once you have permanent residence, you can stay in this country indefinitely, and then I can get some jobs.
What sort of work do you want to do in the aircraft industry?
Well, I'd like to go into research, experimental research, because I feel that I can do better than just analytical work.
Well, I'm sure you'll have a great success, and you have a few more problems than others, but I know you're going to work these problems out, and good luck to you, Alex.
Thank you, Mr.
Right. Well, we've had a chance here to talk with a few of these young men from the university that in just a few weeks are going to march to the strains of pomp and circumstance as they go down dressed in their academic robes with their mortarboards on their heads. They're going to receive the degree that they've worked so hard. They've worked thousands of hours to get these degrees. I think it's very inspiring. It's very exciting to me to talk with these young men and realize the seriousness of their purpose. They know they're riding the crest of the wave at this moment, but they have faith in the future. They have faith that they are going to accomplish their purposes. They're going to work hard toward those. And I think you and I, if I may speak personally, should realize that when they do that, they're going to work for us. So let's always remember to be behind them, and we hope you'll be with us next week when we present the career of a historical collector.
Tomorrow's Careers is produced by Lynn Poole. Associate producers are Leo Geyer and Edmund Levy. Directors, Kennard Kelpie and Herbert B. Cahan. Art direction by Barry Mansfield. Your narrator has been Ted Jett. Portions of this program have been mechanically reproduced. Tomorrow's Careers originates through the facilities of WAAM in Baltimore. Don't miss the Wednesday night fights on ABC television.